Welcome back to the SCIdeShow podcast. Today's episode is going to be a little different. I am having a conversation with my friend Natasha.
Hi.
And we will be discussing a television show that recently came on TVO that I've been wanting to talk about for the last little while. The premise for the show is that it takes two very different politicians and makes them at least discuss a certain issue that they feel is important. The show is called Political Blind Date, and so far they've only had 2 episodes. And the main episode that we're going to be discussing today is the second episode, in which the current leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, will be talking to Doug Ford about the infrastructure for Toronto and how it could be changed for the better. Yeah, okay. So, Natasha, what were your thoughts on this show?
I thought it was certainly very interesting. The idea for the show itself is fantastic in not so many words. Yeah. To bring two people from opposing parties with opposing views and have them discuss a particular issue. The only thing that I wasn't too happy with was that there wasn't enough time to have a more detailed discussion on the topic. It just seemed a bit rushed. 30 minutes is just way too short.
Well, for a show that's 30 minutes long, I mean, if they could solve this entire problem in 30 minutes, that would just be a big waste of taxpayers' money if they could solve this whole thing in about a half an hour.
Well, I didn't expect them to solve anything within 30 minutes or even an hour for that matter.
Well, obviously, yeah.
It's just more, I kind of expected that they would at least discuss some valid solutions to the problem, and the issue that they were addressing was that of public transit in downtown Toronto specifically.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, I expected that they would have a more detailed discussion and actually bounce some valid ideas off of each other.
Well, I think that they had a few here and there. There was that one line that Jagmeet was saying, how when he was showing Doug, he was showing him the difference in the actual bike lanes with the medians and then the non-protected bike lanes, and how the UG almost seemed on board with this whole thing. And he then said, well, if you look at cities like Amsterdam, they basically have gotten rid of most cars and they operate quite well. But then Doug says that, I'm pretty sure Toronto is about 3 times the size of Amsterdam, so something like this really wouldn't work. But it seemed like he was on board with the idea, and I mean, maybe not getting rid of cars altogether, but
I think I'm not against bike riders at all. I love riding bikes myself. I think it's a lot of fun, and you get some fresh air, get your heart pumping. But there's just not enough room in Toronto to put in bike lanes everywhere.
Yeah.
Especially ones that are separated by the median.
Well, yeah. I mean, for if they plan to do something like that and actually have the designated bike lanes with the median, they would have to pretty much rethink how Toronto is laid out, and that's a pretty old city.
Right.
So, I mean, they would have to create an awful lot of one-way streets, which would then cause more heartache and
more congestion.
Yeah. So, but yes, it would be greener, but
Really, at what cost? I mean, everyone's going to be wasting time trying to get from one place to another.
Yeah, I mean, just we've been down to Hamilton a couple of times, and there's an awful lot of one-way streets, and everyone I talk to from Hamilton, it's they say that's one of the worst things about it are the one-way streets.
Right.
And it's one of those like, oh my God, who designed it? Who designed this? This is just such a pain.
Also, I mean, how many people are going to ride bikes in minus 30-degree weather anyways?
I've seen a few people do it. Granted, I look at them like they're
And how do they go shopping? What if they had to buy, a week's worth of groceries, or
invest in duffel bags.
how many duffel bags can you carry while riding a bicycle? And while you're fully layered head to toe with, winter clothing.
Well, then they could probably get one of those electric bicycles or moped, I guess. Maybe not moped, but yeah.
Or even trying to, lug a Christmas tree or a bunch of gifts. What if you're heading down to a party somewhere?
Get a sled.
I don't know. It just, bike lanes. I think it's great to have bike lanes. We could have had bike lanes if there was more room, as I said. But because there's an issue with the width of the roads.
Mm-hmm. And those lanes that they were showing, I think at one point, I believe like the bike lane itself was even split into two.
Yes, I saw that.
Things. So it's one of those like, how wide do they really want them to go? There wasn't an awful lot of room because you're a bicycle, so you're not going to need that much room. But to even divide that up, and maybe they're going to have like, a right turn lane, a straight lane, and then a little F10 turn lane. So then it basically turns into the size of a car type lane.
I don't know. I just don't think that it's feasible to have bike lanes everywhere. I mean, you can in some places. I've seen bike lanes on some roads.
Yeah, and they work. Granted, they're not overly busy.
Right.
So like the main roads would probably not be the best thing to do. I mean, I've driven down.
And it's
Bloor
dangerous
Street
too.
I was just going to come to that. I've driven down Bloor several times, and I've almost had a slight little smack with someone who's just weaving in and out of traffic between the cars, and they're on their bike, and it's one of those like, yeah, that I do get it, but I mean, come on, there are some bicyclists that think that they're better than the car owners.
I think that's a whole other topic.
It is. I'm getting off topic.
But you know what? I really like Doug Ford's suggestion, which is, to go underground and expand the subway.
Well,
the
that
subway
seems to
line.
be the way that things are going. I mean, you have Elon Musk with the Boring Company,
right?
And
his Hyperloop.
That's above the ground because Musk,
right, yeah.
Musk thinks that he's above everybody else, which he can be. But did you actually hear how he came up with the idea for the Boring Company?
No, I didn't.
He was sitting in traffic apparently one day and just wondered how he could get through all this, and then apparently that's where he came up with the idea. Which I was just okay. That's
interesting.
Now, how true that is, I honestly have no idea. He could just be screwing with us. But yeah, there were a few really good points that Doug Ford made. I actually ended up liking him quite a bit from this episode. The only thing I really knew about the Fords were just through the exploits of Rob.
Right.
But that's more of but that is something else entirely. But Doug had a surprisingly good head on his shoulders, if we were to believe anything, based on what happened in the last couple of years with Rob. But there was that one moment when they were driving down St. Clair, and I don't know, and I know that you work uptown, so I don't know how often you get to. I don't know how often you get to St. Clair.
I don't go to St. Clair very often.
Okay, well, where they were, I've driven down there once or twice, and it is
I've been at that intersection though.
It's absolutely horrible. Yeah. But were you walking through it or were you driving?
I was driving through it at one point, and this was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And and that was the first time I was driving through that area. I got so confused at one point that I thought the whatchamacallit, the streetcar tracks are right in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, it was dark, it was raining.
Oh, and you almost drove up them?
I almost drove into those things.
Yeah, that's
because I couldn't see the lines. I couldn't see.
Yeah, that's almost happened to me once or twice, and it was
that
really
was
wasn't
scary.
well, no, it's not the most fun thing out there. But that one thing that he was talking about, and they were driving down there, and there were 3 cars that came by, each like 100 or maybe 200 yards behind one another, and at one point he said, "Oh, okay, well, there's 4 in there. There's 5 in there. There's maybe 3 in that one." Yeah. And he said that it just seemed like a big waste of money just to have that many cars at frequently.
Yes.
And have that small amount of people in there. Now, whether or not they were going to be going somewhere else, that's something else entirely. So, but if they're going just straight down streets, then I would have to agree with him that there's really no point. Why have 3 cars when only having 1 is more than sufficient? Now, granted, I've seen the streetcars very, very full, but that was one time, a few times that actually, when I was walking down Queen Street, and it was, I don't know, like maybe mid-December or so, and it was about -5, which I don't know if you've been down Queen Street during that time.
No, I haven't been in that area.
You are not missing out on anything. It just turns into a wind tunnel, and then that -5 can easily feel like -20, -30 on a good day.
Yikes.
So there were only a small handful of times when I saw streetcars that were absolutely packed with people because it was just too damn cold out.
Oh yeah.
And I was wearing a couple of layers. So I can understand at a few times during the year where it would make sense to have an awful lot. And since it's getting, it just seems like it's getting a hell of a lot colder at certain times.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the weather, the frequency. The frequency of the cars would depend on the weather, or even like rush hour.
Oh yeah,
for example.
I could only imagine how bad it is down there during rush hour.
Yeah.
Yikes. Now, how would you try and solve this?
I would get
this congestion.
See, I would get rid of streetcars entirely.
Okay.
And I'm actually kind of a fan of this new thing that's currently being tested in Dubai. They're testing drone taxis.
Oh yeah. I think I've seen this once or twice.
And
really
right
cool.
now, the drone taxi can carry only 2 passengers.
Okay.
At a time. But who knows? We could end up having a drone bus, or like maybe not a drone bus, like a hover bus that could carry 50 passengers at a time.
Oh, that actually wouldn't suck.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a more elegant solution. There's you either travel underground, or you fly over.
Okay.
Fly from one place to another like that.
Now,
within the city.
Are they on like a direct route, or is it one of those things where it's almost like a taxi cab where it actually can fly wherever?
Right now it's still being tested.
Okay.
So they travel directly from one helipad to another.
Okay. And
each of those skyscrapers end up having one of those pads. I think that's what they're moving towards.
So they would have each building would have one of these
either buildings
pads.
Or they would actually set up certain locations where the drone taxi's allowed to land.
Yeah, I was just thinking that would be an awful lot of pads.
Well, it is Dubai, so there are a lot of people who travel.
I'm talking purely here in Canada.
No, I'm just
purely
saying,
over here.
I'm saying that it wouldn't be such a bad idea for us to be more innovative and perhaps look into these kinds of technologies and develop something on our own.
Okay, all right. Okay, so
That is the future, after all.
very, very true.
We're
But
moving towards that.
oh yeah.
We're moving towards flying cars and flying taxis and flying buses.
Okay. So what about so what about the technology that's available now? Now, one thing that I was thinking about is if they want to do something like this would easily free up. It would get rid of the LRT, and if they had some kind of monorail system installed. I mean, we've seen them work around.
Oh yeah, like in Japan, right?
Japan, Seattle. Like they're all around now. Whether or not they could be seen as eyesores, that's something else, and entirely.
I think it can be made to look elegant.
Very, very true. But you always know that there's going to be someone who says that they are an eyesore.
You can't please everyone, Ryan.
This is very true. This is very, very true. Or there was one thing that I was thinking about. Around like Chicago and Queens, how they have the trains that are actually above the street.
Yes.
I don't know how high up they go, but like so still have the streetcars, but they would just be raised up.
That's not a bad idea.
So it would just free up all of the actual road space and just have them just above there, so there's going to be no accidents or.
Yeah, that would be a really. I think that could be an elegant solution.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, hey, it works, and these cities have been using them for years, and they're and they seem to be doing all right. Now, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but
no, I mean, this is just a casual discussion.
Oh yeah, but I really do like what this show is trying to accomplish. Like we were talking about, how it has people with opposing viewpoints trying to talk about one common issue, and they're just going about it in their own way. Because it really doesn't happen that often. I mean, as we've seen how that was the one thing that I really wanted to do with this show, is actually have some sort of civil discourse about things, and that everyone wants it, but it seems like they're not wanting to do it. Now, granted, I may have a very skewed view of this stuff, given with what I look at.
I think it all just comes down to each one of us trying to keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have different views, and well, if you want to categorize yourself into different parties, political parties and stuff like that, that's fine. But we also need to remind ourselves to, like I said earlier, keep an open mind and listen to each other instead of just, descending into ugly shouting matches.
And I think we were talking earlier, and you brought up how there seems to be a more like party over people.
Yeah.
Now, and that's kind of the way that it's going. Not for everything, but for some things, people, they want to stick to their party, or people who think the same way that they do, and just focus on them. And it's one of those, like, yeah, you do need to do that, but also you have to reach across the aisle and try and work together, because again, like, it's not just we're here in this country, in this city, and we're all very different people. So, and obviously we can't, it's not just a city of blue, a city of red, a city of green, and I'm talking purely political stance. I'm not talking about skin color or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just the ideology, and that's one thing that really needs to happen more and more. So with shows like this, you can at least see that now, whether or not they stick to that whole thing.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Like, are they? It's really wonderful that they got together and sort of hung out with each other for maybe a couple of days, but at the end of it, they're going back to their own offices, to their own parties, and they're going to be surrounded by people.
So you're more worried that they're going to go back to their old ways.
Absolutely, because you're being surrounded in you're going back to your little echo chamber where your original views are constantly being reiterated.
Yeah, but I mean, you could go back slightly changed just a little bit. So instead of a hard blue, you're maybe a navy. Or, no, sorry.
No.
Instead of being like okay, yeah, like slightly purple. It's because you've been changed just a little bit. So, again, but how long that lasts, I don't know.
That remains to be seen. Like I said, I think it's easier for people to just fall back in line with their party's agenda, as opposed to stand up and sort of stick with their new opinions.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen that one. There was that one graphic that was being sent around Twitter over the last little while.
Oh yeah,
where it was talking about that this was more focused on moral outrage, but it's still a good thing to use. It was it shows not circles, but one blue, almost cloud-shaped thing, and then a red cloud-shaped thing.
Okay.
And then there were a few lines going across. And that it was showing how whenever there is a moral outrage or people just tend to focus within their own
bubble.
Yeah.
They stick to their own bubble.
Yeah, and those strings going from red to blue and blue to red, those were the people that are actually talking to the other side. It was a very fascinating thing to look at.
So how many strings were there?
Not very many. It was mostly just like a solid blue, solid red, maybe a few outliers, and then like maybe 12 to 20 string. I couldn't see how many because they were really, really thin, but it would just show that there weren't many people that were reaching across the aisle to talk to somebody else. And it's one of those, okay, well, of course nothing's going to happen if this is what's going on Twitter.
Divided.
Then, granted, Twitter can be a very divisive thing. I don't know if you use it that often.
I never ever use Twitter. Well, actually, the only time I've used Twitter is to complain to the GO Transit people one time when my train was almost half an hour late. It's like, what's going on out there? Where's my train?
It's a great tool, but it's also very divisive.
Yes. I think it's a great tool, but it's just being used the wrong way at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope things change.
Hopefully they do. So hopefully with shows like this, hopefully the episodes, they go on for a little while longer and at least get some people talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Which would be absolutely fantastic. And I think the first episode actually dealt with marijuana legalization, which is a big
I haven't seen that episode yet.
Okay. I know that you would have some thoughts on that whole thing. It was quite the first episode to watch. It was one of those like, oh wow, they're really going for that. And right now,
wow, okay,
it was just So I would highly recommend that people watch the show. It's on TVO's website. So go to tvo.org and search for Political Blind Date, and you'll see both episodes so far. I believe they come out every Monday, so they should have the next one, obviously next Monday. So I would like to thank you, Natasha, for joining me on this. So it's not just me. It's not just me rambling to myself.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much. Let's do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.